In an unprecedented move for the console industry, paying more is now getting you less. And Sony Interactive Entertainment is betting you won't care enough to notice. In a market where technology is supposed to get cheaper and more powerful over time, the company behind the PlayStation 5 has decided to reverse the current, reducing the capabilities of its newest hardware revision while keeping the price exactly the same. This isn't a rumor. It's a confirmed change rolling out in key markets, and it has ignited a firestorm of criticism from the very communities Sony relies on. Today, we're connecting the dots on this critical development. We're not just reporting the news, we're dissecting the strategy behind it. First, we'll break down the anatomy of a downgrade. What exactly is Sony Interactive Entertainment removing from its new PlayStation 5? And what does it mean for your game library in a world of 100-gigabyte downloads? Then, we'll follow the money trail. Is this a necessary response to a brutal global economy, or a cynical ploy to maximize profits at the consumer's expense by shaving off components? And finally, we'll zoom out to examine the pattern. How does this decision fit with Sony's recent price hikes and hardware choices? And is it a sign of a fundamental, perhaps dangerous shift in the company's relationship with its millions of players? Let's get into it. Our first case file today examines the physical change at the heart of this controversy: the shrinking internal storage of the new PlayStation 5 Slim model. On the surface, the numbers might not seem dramatic, but the real-world implications are substantial. The specific model in question is the upcoming CFI 210 series, set to launch in the European market. The original PlayStation 5 and its subsequent revisions shipped with a custom solid-state drive advertised at 1 terabyte. This new model will see that capacity reduced to 825 gigabytes. That's a reduction of 175 gigabytes, or roughly 17.5% of the total advertised storage. Now, for those unfamiliar with how console storage works, it's crucial to understand that the advertised number is never the amount of space you, the user, actually get to use. A significant portion of that drive is reserved for the console's operating system, system cache, and essential software that makes the machine function. For the original 1 terabyte model, this meant the actual usable space for games and applications was closer to 825 gigabytes. With this new model, which starts at a lower 825 gigabyte baseline, the usable space is projected to plummet to somewhere in the region of 667 gigabytes. Let's put that into perspective. A single major AAA title, like Call of Duty, can easily exceed 150 gigabytes with all its updates and content packs. Games like Baldur's Gate 3 or Star Wars Jedi Survivor also command colossal install sizes. With this new, downgraded console, a player's library of installed games could shrink to as few as 4 or 5 major titles before they are forced to start the frustrating cycle of deleting and re-downloading. What makes this move so perplexing, and frankly so insulting to many, is the price. The cost for this less capable digital-only console remains locked at 499 euros. There is no discount, no trade-off, no acknowledgement of the reduced value. You are paying the exact same price for a demonstrably worse product. This flies in the face of decades of industry precedent. Historically, console revisions, the so-called Slim or Pro models, have followed a clear pattern. They either offer the same performance for a lower price, or enhanced performance for the same or slightly higher price. A mid-generation hardware revision that constitutes a straight downgrade in a key specification without a corresponding price drop is virtually unheard of. It represents a fundamental break from the established consumer contract. The article also highlights a particularly strange detail. For now, this change appears to only impact the digital version of the PS5 Slim. This is a crucial piece of the puzzle. The user who buys a digital-only console is, by definition, 100% reliant on that internal solid-state drive. They have no recourse to physical media. Therefore, this downgrade disproportionately punishes the very customers who are most vulnerable to storage limitations. This isn't just a minor technical adjustment. It's a fundamental reduction in the console's core utility, especially for the all-digital gamer. It effectively creates a hidden tax paid in the currency of deleted games, constant library management, and the potential need to purchase expensive external storage expansion sooner rather than later. This is a calculated decision that directly impacts the quality of the user experience. What is the smallest amount of storage you'd find acceptable in a modern console? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you find this level of hardware breakdown valuable, please consider liking the video. It truly helps the channel. But a decision this counterintuitive doesn't happen in a vacuum. To understand why Sony Interactive Entertainment would risk such significant consumer backlash, we have to move beyond the hardware and into the boardroom. We need to follow the money. The most immediate and obvious driver for this change is simple cost reduction. The custom NVMe solid-state drive is one of the most expensive components in the PlayStation 5's bill of materials. NAND flash memory, the technology behind these drives, is a commodity with prices that fluctuate based on global supply and demand. By reducing the capacity from 1 terabyte to 825 gigabytes, Sony's component cost for each drive is lowered. While the saving on an individual unit might only be a few dollars, when you are manufacturing and selling millions upon millions of consoles, those dollars add up to a staggering sum. We're talking tens of millions of dollars saved over the production run. Now, the charitable interpretation, as alluded to in the source text, is that Sony is simply reacting to harsh economic realities. The global economy is indeed in a difficult state. Inflation has driven up the cost of raw materials, manufacturing, and international shipping. We saw Sony Interactive Entertainment take the unprecedented step back in August of 2022 of raising the price of the PlayStation 5 in most major markets, citing exactly these adverse global economic conditions. From that perspective, one could argue this storage downgrade is merely another tool to maintain a target profit margin in the face of rising costs, a less visible alternative to another outright price hike. However, a deeper strategic analysis reveals a more complex picture, particularly when we consider why this change is targeting the digital edition. The dirty little secret of the console business is that the digital-only models have always been a double-edged sword for manufacturers. While they save the cost of a 40K Blu-ray drive, perhaps $20 per unit, they also eliminate a massive revenue stream. Sony Interactive Entertainment makes no money from the sale of used physical games, and its cut from new physical sales is smaller than its 30% commission on all digital sales through the PlayStation Store. The standard console with a disk drive is a far more profitable piece of hardware over its lifetime because it encourages a physical ecosystem that benefits retailers and players. But its primary function for Sony is to drive high-margin software sales through their digital storefront. The digital console, therefore, has always had a much tighter profit margin on the hardware itself. This storage downgrade appears to be a direct, targeted attempt to make the hardware of the digital-only model more profitable, or at least less of a loss leader for Sony. It's an optimization of the company's hardware portfolio. This strategy is thrown into even sharper relief when we compare it to the competition. Microsoft Corporation, with its Xbox division, has pursued a different path. Their two-console strategy, with the Series X and the much cheaper, lower-powered Series S, is built on offering a clear value proposition at different price points, with the ultimate goal of driving subscriptions to its Game Pass service. Microsoft is playing the long game of ecosystem value. Sony Interactive Entertainment, on the other hand, appears to be focused on maximizing per-unit hardware profitability. This move suggests a belief that their brand and exclusive titles are strong enough that they can afford to chip away at the hardware's value proposition without losing significant market share. So, while Sony might point to global economic pressures as a convenient public justification, the evidence strongly suggests this is a targeted, strategic move to bolster the profitability of the digital-only model, a model that has historically been less lucrative for the company. It's less about survival and more about optimizing the balance sheet, 1 GB at a time. Optimizing the balance sheet makes perfect sense from a corporate perspective, but it comes at a cost. And when we place this storage downgrade into the broader context of Sony's recent actions, a troubling pattern for consumers begins to emerge. This decision did not occur in isolation. It is the latest in a series of moves that suggest a significant philosophical shift within Sony Interactive Entertainment's PlayStation division. The first major tremor was the aforementioned price hike in 2022. For an entire generation of gamers, the expectation has been that consoles get cheaper over time. This move shattered that expectation and signaled that the old rules no longer applied. Then came the steady drumbeat of premium, high-margin accessories. The DualSense Edge controller, a pro peripheral with swappable components, was launched at a staggering $200. While feature-rich, it was criticized for not incorporating more durable Hall effect sensor joysticks to combat the pervasive issue of stick drift, a decision many saw as prioritizing future repairs and sales over long-term durability. More recently, we saw the announcement of the PlayStation Portal, a $200 dedicated streaming device that can only stream games from a user's own PlayStation 5 over Wi-Fi. It's a niche product at a premium price, further reinforcing a strategy focused on extracting maximum revenue from the most engaged segment of the player base. This philosophy can be seen on the software side as well, with the restructuring of the PlayStation Plus service into 3 more expensive tiers. While the new premium and extra tiers offer a catalog of games, the move also complicated the service and, for many, resulted in a price increase for the same set of features they previously enjoyed. For industry veterans, this trend feels eerily familiar. It brings to mind one of Sony's most infamous historical blunders, the PlayStation Vita and its proprietary, exorbitantly priced memory cards. Sony created an artificial hardware bottleneck, a lack of internal storage, and then sold the solution at an enormous markup. It was a transparently anti-consumer practice that contributed to the platform's struggle in the market. This PlayStation 5 Slim storage downgrade feels like a spiritual successor to that strategy. It is a modern, more subtle iteration of the same core idea: create a hardware limitation and monetize the user's desire to overcome it. The community reaction, as documented in the article, shows that this pattern is not going unnoticed. The quotes from the PlayStation 5 subreddit, phrases like, "No way this is real," and "This is beyond pathetic," are not just about 175 gigabytes. They are a response to this cumulative effect. The comment that it feels like a fever dream compared to the old days speaks volumes. It reflects a sentiment that the company, once seen as the champion of gamers during the PlayStation 4 era, is becoming arrogant and disconnected from its audience. Viewed in isolation, the storage downgrade is annoying, but seen as the latest chapter in a story that includes unprecedented price hikes and a portfolio of expensive niche accessories, it paints a picture of a market leader shifting its focus from aggressive value generation to aggressive profit extraction. The immense goodwill earned during the PlayStation 4 generation is being spent, and consumers are starting to count the cost. So what do we have? A tangible hardware downgrade that directly and negatively impacts the user experience. A clear financial incentive driven by per-unit profit margin optimization, and a growing pattern of corporate decisions that consistently prioritize revenue over consumer value. These are not three separate stories. They are three facets of a single, overarching strategy from Sony Interactive Entertainment. In the face of fierce competition from Microsoft's subscription-based ecosystem and Nintendo's market-defying innovation, Sony is doubling down on a premium walled garden approach. Every decision, from hardware specifications to accessory pricing to its 30% cut on the PlayStation Store, is designed to lock users into its ecosystem and maximize the lifetime value of each and every customer. This storage downgrade is simply the most recent and perhaps most blatant example of this philosophy in action. It is a calculated bet that the power of the PlayStation brand and its library of exclusive games is strong enough to weather the negative sentiment generated by such a move. The era of consoles becoming better and cheaper over their life cycle appears to be over, at least for this generation and at least from this market leader. The new question for us as consumers is where we draw the line. How much less are we willing to accept for how much more? If you want to continue making sense of these complex industry shifts, make logical pauses to the channel for more analysis like this. Thank you for watching.